My wife's phone wouldn't stop lighting up with messages from another man. What I uncovered wasn't just an affair, it was a secret buried for decades, the kind that could rip lives apart. I took that man's wife to the most exclusive gala in Chicago, and what happened there ended up destroying 4 lives in a single night. But the real twist was this. I learned I had a son, and he would become my secret weapon. My name is William Franklin. I'm 44 years old, and until 6 months ago, I honestly thought I had everything a man could ask for. I'd built my life from the ground up, dragging myself out of a blue-collar neighborhood in Detroit to become one of the top venture capitalists in Chicago. My portfolio was worth over $50 million, spread across tech startups, medical device companies, and more. Success wasn't just my job, it was how I defined myself. I met Autumn at a charity auction 12 years ago. She was 29, a stunning brunette with emerald green eyes that seemed to hide stories I wanted to spend the rest of my life uncovering. She worked as an event coordinator for high-end fundraisers, the kind of woman who could make wealthy donors feel at ease while persuading them to write bigger checks. The way she laughed at my jokes that night, I knew I was finished. Our wedding ended up being featured in Chicago Magazine. Autumn looked like royalty in her custom Vera Wang gown, and I felt like the luckiest man alive walking down the aisle with her at the historic Palmer House Hotel. We honeymooned in Tuscany, spent 2 weeks drinking wine and mapping out our future. She dreamed of starting her own event planning company, and I was more than happy to fund it. For 11 years, life looked perfect from the outside. We lived in a restored Victorian mansion in Lincoln Park, the kind of place that made other power couples quietly jealous. Autumn's business took off, organizing weddings and corporate galas for Chicago's elite. We flew to Europe twice a year, owned a cabin in Aspen, and hosted dinner parties that everyone in our circle wanted an invitation to. But I've since learned that perfect is often just another word for fake. The first crack appeared last spring. Autumn started working later, taking calls in other rooms, smiling at her phone in a way that made something inside me twist. Whenever I asked, she brushed it off, demanding clients, difficult vendors, last-minute changes. I wanted to believe her because the alternative was something I wasn't ready to face. Then the routine changes began. New workout classes that suddenly required premium athletic outfits. A fresh obsession with lingerie I never saw her wear for me. Weekend conferences that kept multiplying. Each excuse made sense on its own, but together they formed a pattern I refused to truly look at. The night everything came crashing down, I was supposed to be in San Francisco closing a deal with a biotech startup. The meeting got pushed to Monday, so I grabbed an earlier flight, thinking I'd surprise Autumn with dinner at her favorite restaurant. Instead, I walked into our kitchen and saw her phone buzzing on the counter while she was in the shower. The name on the screen froze my blood. Theodore Thornfield. He wasn't just some random guy. Theodore was the CEO of Meridian Holdings, a real estate development firm I'd nearly invested in 2 years earlier. Tall, silver hair, the polished confidence of a man used to being the center of attention at country clubs and private events. He was also married to Megan, a woman I'd chatted with more than once at charity galas. They looked like the picture of a solid power couple. I stared at that phone like it was a bomb. 3 missed calls in the past hour. My hand shook as I picked it up, fully aware that whatever I saw next would change everything. I didn't even need to unlock it. The message preview was right there on the screen. Can't wait for tonight. Room 412 at the Renaissance. Same as always. The shower was still running upstairs. Autumn had no idea I was home. No idea her perfect little world was seconds away from collapsing. I could have gone straight up to the bedroom and confronted her. I could have demanded the truth right then. But instead, something cold and methodical slid into place inside me. I'd made my fortune by gathering information before making a move. This wouldn't be any different. I set her phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked quietly to my home office. By then, my hands were steady again. Muscle memory took over as I opened my laptop and started making calls. The first was to Raymond Cole, a private investigator I'd hired in the past to vet potential business partners. He used to be with the Chicago PD and now specialized in corporate espionage and, when necessary, marital investigations. William Franklin speaking. I need you to look into something for me, and I need it done quietly, I said when he picked up. What's going on? He asked, his tone calm and professional. I need surveillance on my wife, the full package. Where she goes, who she meets, how long it's been happening. Everything. There was a pause. Cole had run background checks for me before, but this was a different kind of request. "Are you sure you want to do this, William? Once we start—" "I'm sure," I cut in. "How fast can you get started?" "Tonight, if you want. I can have someone at the Renaissance Hotel within the hour." The water shut off upstairs. I could hear Autumn moving around, probably getting ready for her night with Theodore. My stomach twisted with rage and disbelief. 11 years of marriage, and she was throwing it all away. For what? A thrill? Another man telling her she was special? "Do it," I said. "And Raymond, I want everything. Photos, videos, financials, messages. If she's been plotting this behind my back, I need to know how far it goes." I hung up and leaned back in my leather chair, my eyes drifting to the framed photo on my desk. It was from our 5th anniversary party. Autumn's arms wrapped around my neck, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. I stared at that picture, realizing I might have been the only one who believed it was real. We looked happy. Hell, I genuinely believed we were happy. Footsteps on the stairs snapped me out of it. I quickly closed my laptop, grabbed a random book from the shelf, and settled back into my chair just as Autumn appeared in the doorway. She was dressed to kill, a black dress that hugged every curve, heels that added a good 4 inches to her height, makeup done with the kind of precision that says, "I need to impress someone." "Oh," Autumn said, hand flying to her chest in mock surprise. "You scared me. I thought you were in San Francisco." "Meeting got moved to Monday," I said, keeping my voice easy. "You look incredible. Big night?" Her smile slipped for half a second, then snapped back into place. "Client meeting. You know how demanding Mrs. Patterson is about her daughter's wedding." I nodded, pretending to buy it. "Of course. Well, don't let me keep you. I'll probably turn in early anyway." She leaned in and kissed my cheek, and that's when I caught it, a faint trace of expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "Don't wait up, honey. This might run late." After she left, I stayed in my office for a long time, staring into space. The house felt different now, like a stage where I'd been performing a part I didn't know I'd been cast in. Every shared dinner, every conversation, every intimate moment, how much of it had actually been real? My phone buzzed with a text from Cole. "Target acquired, Renaissance Hotel, just like you said. We're in position." I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and tried to focus on emails, but the words swam uselessly on the screen. Around midnight, another text came through. "Got what you need. She's not coming home tonight." I didn't sleep. I sat on the back deck instead, nursing the bourbon and planning my next moves. By dawn, I'd made 3 decisions that would change everything. First, I called my attorney, David Sherman. We'd known each other since college, and he handled high-asset divorces for Chicago's upper crust. When I finished explaining, his tone shifted. "William, before we go any further, I need to ask, are you absolutely sure about this? Once we start the legal process, there's no undoing it." "I'm sure, David. Draft the papers, but don't file them yet. I want to control the timing." Second, I liquidated several non-essential investments and moved the funds into accounts Autumn couldn't touch. Completely legal, the money had been mine long before the marriage, but it would severely limit her options when everything came to light. Third, and most importantly, I started digging into Theodore's wife, Megan. If they wanted to play games, I'd make damn sure everyone played by the same rules. Cole's report landed in my inbox that afternoon, sent via encrypted email. The photos were like a punch to the gut. Autumn and Theodore walking into the hotel together, leaving separately in the morning, their body language intimate and easy, like this wasn't new to them at all. But what really grabbed me was the timeline. Credit card records, hotel stays, charges at restaurants. It all pointed to one thing. This had been going on for 8 months. Not a few impulsive weeks like I'd tried to tell myself. 8 months of lies. 8 months of her coming home to me, kissing me goodnight, acting like our marriage still meant something. The betrayal dug deeper than I'd imagined. That evening, Autumn came home carrying flowers, orchids, the kind that cost more than some people's weekly paycheck. "Sorry about last night," she said lightly as she arranged them in a crystal vase. "Mrs. Patterson insisted on going over every detail twice." "No problem," I replied, watching her performance like it was theater. "How's the photography class going? You haven't mentioned it lately." For a split second, confusion flickered across her face. She'd forgotten that particular lie. "Oh, it's fine, just basic composition stuff. Pretty boring, actually." I nodded and smiled, letting her think she was still fooling me. Inside, though, my resolve was turning to steel. She wanted to play devoted wife while dismantling everything we'd built. Fine. But she was about to learn that I don't just play games, I win them. The next few weeks became an exercise in controlled fury. Outwardly, nothing changed. I stuck to my usual routine: morning workouts, back-to-back meetings, dinners at home with Autumn, while Cole's team tracked every move she made. The evidence piled up like exhibits in a courtroom, each new piece more incriminating than the last. Autumn grew careless in her confidence. She left her laptop unlocked more often, took calls in the next room instead of hiding completely, even brought Theodore's gifts into our house. The diamond bracelet she claimed was a bonus for landing a high-profile client. Purchased by Theodore 3 days before, it showed up on her wrist. But the most interesting part came from Cole's deeper dive into Theodore himself. Meridian Holdings was bleeding money, propped up by increasingly risky financing, clever accounting, and Theodore's charm. He wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was robbing his investors blind, using his reputation and connections to paper over the fact that his company was basically a Ponzi scheme waiting to collapse. That's when I decided it was time to meet Megan Thornfield. I arranged the encounter at a charity auction for Chicago Children's Hospital, an event I knew we'd all attend. Autumn was actually working that night for real, managing logistics for the gala. Theodore was slated to show up as a major donor, smiling for photos and playing the part of the polished, successful CEO, while his empire rotted underneath him. Megan arrived alone, telling anyone who asked that Theodore was dealing with a business emergency. She looked flawless in a navy gown, but I saw the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers tightened around her champagne glass. "Megan," I said, approaching her during the silent auction. "William Franklin. We've met a few times at different events." "Of course," she replied, offering a polite, genuine smile. "How's Autumn? I saw her earlier making sure everything is running smoothly." "She's wonderful," I lied smoothly. "Listen, I hope this isn't too forward, but I've been considering some real estate investments. I know Theodore's firm focuses on commercial developments. Maybe we could grab a coffee sometime and talk potential opportunities?" Megan's expression shifted just slightly. "I'm sure Theodore would love to talk business," she said. "But honestly, William, his schedule has been insane lately. Emergency meetings, last-minute trips. I barely see him anymore." There it was, the opening I needed. "That sounds familiar," I replied. "Autumn's been working crazy hours, too. Sometimes I feel like I'm married to a ghost." Megan laughed, but there was a crack of sadness in it. "Exactly. Theodore leaves before I'm awake, comes home after I go to bed, always glued to his phone. I'm starting to wonder if success is worth it when it costs you your marriage." We talked for another 20 minutes, two spouses venting about their busy partners. Underneath the small talk, I watched her closely, searching for any hint that she suspected what was really going on. What I found was worse than suspicion: a woman who'd been gaslit into believing her husband's distance was about work stress, not another woman. By the end of the night, I'd done 3 things: planted seeds of doubt, positioned myself as a sympathetic ally, and confirmed that Megan was completely in the dark. She wasn't part of the betrayal. She was another casualty. Walking to my car, I felt the weight of what was coming. Soon 4 lives would be blown apart, but only 2 people truly deserved it. The hardest part of justice, I was learning, is accepting that innocent people sometimes get caught in the blast radius. But Theodore and Autumn had made their choices. Now they would live with the fallout. 3 weeks into the investigation, Detective Cole hit me with something I never saw coming. We met at a downtown diner, out of the way, away from anyone who might recognize us. He slid a manila folder across the scratched Formica table. "William, there's something else you need to know," he said. "It's not directly tied to your wife's affair, but it might complicate things." I opened the folder and felt the ground tilt under me. Inside was a photo of a 19-year-old kid, who looked exactly like I did at 19. Same dark hair, same jawline, same green eyes that stared back at me from the mirror every morning. "His name is Michael Franklin," Cole said quietly. "He lives in Milwaukee with his mother, Jennifer Franklin. She never married after you two broke up 20 years ago." Jennifer. Her name hit me like a train. We'd dated my final year at Northwestern, right before I moved to Chicago to start my career. She'd been a journalism major, sharp, passionate, relentless. Our relationship ended when I got an offer to work in London for 6 months. By the time I came back, she'd graduated and vanished. She tried to contact you once, Cole continued. She sent a letter to your first investment firm when the boy was 3. You never got it. You'd already left to start Franklin Capital Management. My hands shook as I flipped through the photos. Michael working at a coffee shop near the University of Wisconsin campus. Michael playing pickup basketball. Michael, with my face, living a life completely separate from mine. Does Autumn know? I asked. No sign of that, Cole said. But there's more. The kid's been asking about his father. Jennifer finally told him your name last month. He's been looking you up online. I closed the folder, my thoughts spinning. I had a son who'd grown up without me, while I had no idea he even existed. The guilt was suffocating, but beneath it, something powerful surged up, a fierce protective instinct I'd never felt before. I want to meet him, I said. Are you sure? Cole asked. With everything else you're dealing with. I'm sure. Set it up. That evening, I sat alone in my study, staring at Michael's photos while Autumn chattered on in the background about her busy day. More lies dressed up as client meetings and vendor calls. For the first time since I discovered her affair, the anger inside me shifted. I felt something else. Hope. Autumn noticed my distance. You seem far away lately, William. Is everything okay at work? She asked. I looked at her, the woman who'd shared my bed for 11 years while quietly dismantling our life, and made a decision. Everything's fine, honey, I said calmly. Just thinking about the future. She smiled and kissed my forehead, completely unaware that the future I was envisioning no longer included her. The coffee shop in Milwaukee was exactly what you'd expect from a college town. Exposed brick, mismatched chairs, indie music humming under the hiss of espresso machines. I showed up 30 minutes early and picked a table in the corner where I could see the entrance without drawing attention. Michael walked in at exactly 2 p.m., just like Cole said he would. Seeing him in person was like staring into a younger version of myself. He moved with the same easy confidence I'd had at his age, ran his hand through his hair the same absent-minded way when he was thinking. It was like watching a ghost of my past. I waited until he was behind the counter, then approached casually. Large coffee, black, I said, studying his face up close. Sure thing, he replied, then paused. His eyes narrowed slightly, like a memory was tugging at him. Do we know each other? You look familiar. I get that a lot, I said, passing him a 20 for a $5 drink. Keep the change. For the next hour, I sat at my table pretending to work while really watching my son. He treated customers with respect, not fake enthusiasm. He was efficient, but not rushed. When an older woman spilled her drink, he cleaned it up without a word and brought her a fresh one on the house. Character. The kid had character. When his shift ended, I followed him from a distance as he walked to a nearby park and settled on a bench with a stack of textbooks. From the covers, it looked like pre-law material. Smart, driven, no surprise there. I approached slowly, hands visible, posture relaxed. Mind if I sit? I asked. Looks like all the other benches are taken. He glanced up, that same puzzled look returning. Go ahead. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Then Michael snapped his book shut and turned to me fully. Okay, this is weird, he said. You were at the coffee shop, now you're here. Either you're following me, or this is the strangest coincidence ever. I'd rehearsed this moment a dozen times in my head, but now that it was here, every carefully prepared line felt wrong. Michael, I said quietly, my name is William Franklin. I think we need to talk. Recognition hit him like a punch. His face went white, then flushed, then drained again. You're him, he whispered. You're my father. Yes, I answered. I am. We sat there in silence for a long moment. Then Michael let out a sharp, humorless laugh that cut straight through me. 20 years, he said. 20 years, and you just show up at my job like it's nothing. I didn't know, Michael, I said quietly. I swear to you, I had no idea you existed until 3 days ago. His anger was raw and completely deserved. I didn't try to defend myself. I just sat there and took it, letting him spill out 2 decades worth of hurt and questions, while tourists wandered past us, oblivious to the fact that everything was shifting on that park bench. "You want to know what really screws me up?" Michael said, his voice cracking a little. "I used to make up stories about you. Mom wouldn't tell me anything, so I'd imagine you were some kind of hero, a soldier overseas, a doctor saving lives, or maybe just a guy who didn't know I was alive. I didn't know," I repeated. "Michael, I swear on everything I have and everything I am, I didn't know." He studied my face like he was trying to see if the truth was written there. "Mom said you were ambitious," he finally said. "Said you cared more about money than you did about people." "She wasn't wrong," I admitted. "Back then, I was selfish. I was obsessed with my career, with building something big, making a name for myself. I thought I'd have all the time in the world for a family. Later." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the photos Cole had sent me. Autumn and Theodore going into hotels together, kissing in parking lots, playing house while I thought I was building a life. "Now I'm learning that success means nothing if the people around you aren't who you think they are," I said. "I've spent 11 years married to a woman who's been betraying me for months, but finding out about you, that isn't a betrayal. That's the best thing that's happened to me in years." Michael looked at the photos, his anger shifting into something more complicated. "So, your wife is sleeping with another man?" he asked. "She is," I said. "Has been for 8 months, and I'm in the middle of planning my response." For the first time, he almost smiled. "Revenge? That doesn't sound very heroic." "No, it doesn't," I agreed. "But sometimes being a man means making hard choices. Sometimes it means making sure people understand that what they do has consequences." We talked for another 2 hours. Michael told me about growing up without a father, about Jennifer working herself to the bone at 2 jobs to keep him in school, about his goal of becoming a lawyer. I told him about my business, the money I'd made, and the ways I'd failed as a person along the way. "I want to be part of your life," I said at last. "I know I don't deserve it, and I know it won't be simple, but I want to try." Michael was quiet for a long time before he asked, "What about your wife? What happens to her? Are you going to destroy her?" I looked at him, this young man with my face and somehow a clearer moral compass than I'd had in years. I saw something in him I'd lost along the way, the ability to separate justice from pure vengeance. "I'm going to bring the truth to light," I said carefully. "What happens after that? That's on her." Michael nodded slowly. "Okay, I want to see how this plays out. But William, if you're going to be my father, you'd better be the kind of man I can respect." "I'll try," I said. "That's all I can promise you." "Then let's start there." The next few weeks were a delicate balancing act, plotting my revenge while trying to build a relationship with my son. Michael agreed to come to Chicago the weekend before the charity gala, so we could talk without the looming pressure of a public scene hanging over us. I booked him a room at the Palmer House, the same hotel where Autumn and I had gotten married. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "This place is insane," Michael said as we sat in the lobby bar. "Mom always said you did well, but seeing it is different." "Money isn't everything," I said automatically, then caught myself and shook my head. "Sorry, that probably sounds ridiculous coming from the guy who just parked you in a $500 a night hotel." "Actually," he said, "it sounds like something a dad would say." We were making progress slowly. Michael had Jennifer's sharp tongue and my stubbornness, which meant our conversations were anything but dull. He questioned every part of my plan for the gala, forcing me to face my own motives head on. "So you're going to humiliate your wife in front of a room full of rich people," he said over dinner. "And then what?" "Then she has to live with the consequences of what she did," I replied. "And the other guy's wife, Megan, what about her consequences?" That question had been haunting me for weeks. Megan Thornfield hadn't done anything wrong, but she'd be devastated when the truth hit. "Sometimes innocent people get hurt," I said. "That's on Theodore and Autumn, not on me." "Is it though?" Michael pressed. "You're the one who decides how this all goes down. You could talk to them in private, give them a chance to confess, let them twist it however they want and play the victims." He shrugged. "Or maybe you give them one chance to actually do the right thing." That night, Cole sent a text. I'd hired him to shadow Autumn again. She was supposedly with a client, but his update confirmed what I already knew. She was at the Renaissance with Theodore. Your wife's at the hotel again. Room 412, same as always. They just ordered room service. Looks like a long night. I showed the message to Michael. He read it, his face unreadable. You could go there right now, he said. Walk in, confront them, end it tonight. I could, I said, but I won't. No, he said. You want them to pay in public. You want everyone who respects them to see who they really are. He drained the rest of his wine and stood up. Then you better be sure you can live with that choice, he said. Because once you go that way, there's no walking it back. He was right, of course. In 2 days, I would walk into a ballroom with my wife's lover's wife on my arm, and what would happen there would be brutal for everyone involved. The Chicago Children's Hospital Charity Gala was exactly the kind of event Autumn lived for. Crystal chandeliers, couture gowns, and enough concentrated wealth in one room to bankroll a small country. I walked into the ballroom with Megan Thornfield on my arm, both of us playing our roles to perfection. I can't believe I'm actually doing this, Megan whispered as we stepped into the Four Seasons Grand Hall. You deserve the truth, I murmured, adjusting my cufflinks. And they deserve the fallout. Megan looked stunning in a midnight blue gown that highlighted the silver in her hair. We'd spent the afternoon rehearsing our cover story. Old friends who had reconnected after noticing how strangely absent Theodore and Autumn had been from recent events. The moment we entered, the room shifted. Conversations dipped, heads turned, whispered speculation trailed behind us like a shadow. I spotted Autumn near the silent auction tables. The color drained from her face as soon as she saw us together. At the bar, Theodore's confident expression faltered as he watched his wife walk toward me with the familiarity of someone who had known me for years. William, Autumn said, reaching us first. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were pure panic. What a surprise to see you here, with Megan. Autumn, darling, I said smoothly, kissing her cheek. Megan and I bumped into each other last week. Since you've been so busy with work lately, I thought she might enjoy some company tonight. How thoughtful, Megan added, sounding perfectly innocent. Autumn, you look beautiful. That dress is gorgeous. Thank you, Autumn said tightly. Where's Theodore tonight? Business emergency, Megan lied without blinking. You know how demanding his work can be. From the corner of my eye, I watched Theodore approach, his expression tightening as he realized the situation was spinning out of his control. He'd probably expected a quiet evening with my oblivious wife, not a public showdown with both spouses in the same place at the same time. William, he said, extending his hand, good to see you. And Megan, sweetheart, what are you doing here? William invited me, Megan replied, taking his hand but keeping her other hand lightly resting on my arm. Wasn't that sweet of him? Since you've been working such long hours, he thought I might appreciate the company. The four of us stood in a perfect little tableau of lies. 2 cheaters and 2 spouses who finally knew the truth. The room could feel it. Conversations slowed, eyes turned. People pretended not to stare and failed miserably. Why don't we find our table? I suggested lightly. I believe we're all seated together tonight. Autumn went pale. Together? Didn't you know? I smiled. I bought a table for 10. Michael will be joining us as well. Michael? Theodore repeated. My son, I said, watching their faces carefully. Strange Autumn never mentioned him. He's very excited to meet my wife and her business partners. They had no idea how brutal the night was about to become. Michael arrived fashionably late, looking like he'd belonged in that world his entire life. The tuxedo fit him perfectly, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was. Dad, he said warmly, pulling me into a quick hug before turning to the table. You must be Autumn. I've heard a lot about you. Autumn's smile was brittle. Michael, what a surprise. William never said he had a son. 20 years of surprises, Michael replied evenly. We're making up for lost time now. Dinner passed in excruciating slow motion. Every course came with a side of tension. Theodore kept glancing at his phone, as if he could summon a crisis to escape. Autumn barely ate, her eyes flitting between me and Michael, trying to piece together a puzzle that was already solved. Then dessert arrived, and with it, my moment. I rose from my chair and tapped my champagne glass with a silver spoon. The clear ring echoed through the ballroom, and conversations all around us faded. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying through the sound system, if I could have your attention for just a moment, I'd like to propose a toast. At our table, Autumn's fingers clenched her napkin so hard her knuckles turned white. Theodore half pushed his chair back, then realized he had nowhere to go and slowly sat again. To truth, I began, pulling out my phone and syncing it to the projection system. To loyalty, and to the consequences of betrayal. The first image appeared on the massive screen behind me. Autumn and Theodore walking into the Renaissance Hotel together. A wave of shocked murmurs rolled through the room. The second photo flashed up, an unmistakable shot of them kissing passionately in the parking garage. The third showed them in Theodore's office, her dress rumpled, his hands very clearly where they shouldn't have been. For the past 8 months, I continued, my voice steady while chaos began to ripple through the crowd, these two people have been having an affair behind the backs of their spouses. They've lied, cheated, and stolen something you can never get back. Time from the people who trusted them most. Autumn was sobbing openly now, mascara streaking down her face. Theodore looked like he might collapse. Around us, Chicago's wealthy elite watched, horrified and enthralled, as two of their own were exposed. But that's not all, I said. Theodore Thornfield has also been stealing from his investors. Financial documents appeared on the screen. Statements, wire transfers, debt schedules. Meridian Holdings is bankrupt, I announced. It's being held together by illegal loans and hidden obligations. While Theodore here has been pretending to be a brilliant businessman, he's been embezzling from everyone who put their trust in him. Security stepped into the room, but not hotel staff, federal agents. Cole had timed everything down to the second. Megan rose to stand beside me, her voice ringing out clear and strong. I'm filing for divorce, she said, and I'll be pressing charges for theft, fraud, and emotional abuse. As am I added, turning to Autumn. Our marriage is over. The divorce papers will be served tomorrow morning. Theodore lurched to his feet, trying to say something, but Michael was already there, blocking his path. My son looked him dead in the eye. Sit down, he said coldly. Face what you've done like a man. The agents closed in, handcuffs flashing under the chandeliers. In front of 300 witnesses, Theodore Thornfield was led out of the ballroom, his career and reputation collapsing with every step. Autumn looked at me with tear-filled, desperate eyes. William, please, she cried. We can fix this. No, I said quietly. We can't, but maybe you can learn from it. For your sake, I hope you do. 6 months later, I found myself in the same hotel, but for a very different reason. This time, it was for Michael's law school graduation party. He'd transferred to Northwestern to be closer to Chicago, and we'd spent nearly every weekend since then rebuilding the relationship we should have had from the start. Autumn was working as an event coordinator at a hotel in Milwaukee, starting from scratch with nothing but a resume and the clothes she'd left with. Theodore was serving a 15-year sentence in federal prison for fraud and embezzlement. Megan had moved to San Francisco, starting over with a fresh life and a well-deserved settlement. Any regrets? Michael asked, adjusting the new law school ring on his finger. I looked around at the celebration, at my son surrounded by people who believed in him, at the peace I finally felt after every line had been crossed and then redrawn. None, I said. Sometimes being a man means making the hard choices. Sometimes it means making sure people understand that actions have consequences. And sometimes, Michael added with a small smile, it means knowing when to stop and start building something better. He was right, as usual. The revenge was finished. What remained was the harder work. Being the father I should have been from the very beginning.